This is the Lifestream Final Fantasy Podcast, episode number 11, for December 2nd, 2015. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Lifestream Final Fantasy Podcast. I am Mike Ficklin, also known as Vader SW1 on the forums, and joining me on this mythic quest into all things Final Fantasy are Carlie.
Hello.
Flintlock.
Hi there.
JasonTandro.
What's going on, everybody?
And Ryushikaze.
Pie is delicious.
And basically what this show will be about is for an hour or so every few weeks we will discuss all things Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy related. We'll hit upon recent news and notes and delve into a different topic of discussion each episode. Have a recommendation for something we should discuss? Feel free to hit us up at lifestreampod@gmail.com or comment on the episode posts on the forums each week. How's it going, folks?
Not too bad.
It's been a while.
Yes, it has.
I missed the last one because I was nearly in a wreck and traffic was terrible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes,
Glad
that
you-
is awesome.
It's probably a good thing I decided not to come on because I would have been, swearing and angry the entire time.
Which is different from normal how?
I'm angry.
Okay, good point.
So we've got quite a bit of news and notes that have come through over the last couple of weeks here. Actually, I guess it's been a month since we've had a real episode here, so got quite a bit of news and notes to catch up on, so we'll dive right on into that. We will start with some very interesting Final Fantasy 15 news that's breaking here. Apparently, the start-to-finish pre-beta is completed, and I'm assuming that we are all excited about this.
And it only took 10 years.
Right? Right?
I mean, maybe in another 5 they'll have it into actual beta.
They should change the name from Final Fantasy 15 to Final Fantasy Forever.
No, Final Fantasy Duke Nukem. Let's just go whole hog.
Wow.
I've got Magicite of Steel. No, I'm excited about it because it's going to be a finished product, and I liked Episode Disguise, so I'm excited. I know there's been a lot of negativity on this podcast towards 15, but if it's getting done and we actually have something we can go forward and look forward to maybe possibly seeing a release next year, I'd be stoked. I'm excited about that. Maybe finally getting to play this game completely.
I look forward to Final Fantasy's take on, the post-apocalypse. I mean, this is another Fallout game, right? No.
Also in related Final Fantasy 15 news, Final Fantasy 15 director Hajime Tabata went on Twitter to announce that a single Moogle will end up appearing in Final Fantasy 15. Thanks for the correction.
If you see an A at the end, always assume that it's an E at the end of a name is almost always a long A. So
it would be Hajime? Is that
Hajime?
Hajime. Okay. Apparently, a Moogle is going to end up appearing in Final Fantasy 15. He mentioned that it wouldn't be very chatty, but it will have a light level of development work done for it. And I think this is in response to a poll that Square had sent out, asking if Moogle should be involved in the game. How do we feel about this?
It's like asking if Moogles should be involved in the game. Why don't you ask if your game should be called Final Fantasy? It's a Final Fantasy game. It should have Moogles on it.
and Chocobo.
Agreed.
I just hope that he doesn't talk, but he does join you in battle and occasionally fetches and does... Basically, I'm hoping he's dog meat.
These
These Fallout references are just gonna keep coming, folks. I'm in the middle of it. I gotta get it out of my system somehow.
Now, don't be a red menace. I feel like the whole Moogle thing coming in at the last minute like this, it's nice that they're listening to the fans, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, if it wasn't part... this is going to sound completely counterintuitive to the entire conversation we've had up to this point, but if it wasn't part of the original vision you had for the game and you threw it in at the last second, then it feels kind of forced.
It does, and actually, while I am happy that the Moogle is going to end up showing up in the game in some fashion, I think it kind of is setting an awkward precedent.
That's going to be in Final Fantasy 16. We're going to have, Cloud Strife suddenly show up, and then a big fanfare appears all over the screen. Look, kids, it's Cloud. Yeah, that's kind of what this is.
Honestly, though, if I could actually see that working in the right sort of game, like if it was a game that didn't take itself seriously at all, if this was the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back of Final Fantasies, I mean, there's no way they could go wrong.
They did rename Kate Sith the Boo Boo Kitty Fuck, so.
See, I don't think it's that big of a deal because I'm thinking it's gonna be more of like a cameo. It's not really gonna affect in any way the actual story or anything.
Yeah, the speculation that I've heard is that it's going to end up being like some kind of stuffed animal line or something hanging in the rearview mirror of Noctis's car or whatever. So,
or it's going to be like a hologram or something.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems why bother?
I do figure that it might be an AI, because we're dealing with a high technology world in 15. So they do have things like AIs. It might just be an AI interface.
Could be.
It'll be our Cortana.
Okay. So Square Enix also released a Final Fantasy 15 fan kit. It includes Noctis's ringtone, which you can put on your phone, Twitter icons and cover photos featuring the cast of the game. And I will actually put a link up in the show notes so that folks can check that out. On a brief glance, it looks like it's on the it's all in Japanese only here, so it doesn't look like they've released an English version of the fan kit at this point. Also,
it doesn't look like it's too hard to navigate, though. So
no, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. Also, we had some Final Fantasy 14 news drop. Patch 3.1 titled As Goes Light, So Goes Darkness went live on November the 10th. And again, I will include some patch notes in the show notes for the Final Fantasy 14 patch there. Is anybody playing the new patch at this point? I know JT was playing 14 for a while.
I had to take a brief hiatus, mostly due to financial issues. Just couldn't continue to drop in the money for the sub. It's not terrible at all. It's actually a really good subscription fee, as far as MMO pricing goes. But I just haven't been playing for a while. I'm still playing through 2.5. I haven't even gotten to Heaven's Word yet. So when I get back, I've got a lot of catching up to do. I've got about 80 hours of gameplay to catch up on.
Yeah.
Lex, even though he's not here, he has been played essentially non-stop since last week.
So I take it he's already caught up in this new patch then?
To be honest, he talks about it on Skype calls, but I don't know what he's talking about. I zone out and I'm not paying attention to what he's saying. It was mentioned to me in a very non-subtle way that this week or something, this month, they're going to have like a 4-day subscription free thing. And it was mentioned to me in a way saying, go fucking play the game right now.
If I had the time to devote to it, I probably would. But with us doing this retrospective series, I just, and trying to stay up with my family, probably not. It's probably going to have to wait for a while.
It is a life drain.
Yeah.
When I first discovered it, I lost hours. I discovered this game for the brief 3-week period I was unemployed after I got laid off, and I literally sunk a day and a half just playing that game. So it will consume you.
That's why I've never really let myself get tied up in doing the online MMO thing. It just... I don't have that kind of time to sink into it, and I really don't have the time to try to join up with a clan or something like that so I can actually progress through the game, so...
It's not that clan heavy, to be honest, but you have to find partners just through the random partner finding thing. But the biggest thing is with this, it's the same with any MMO. I've been playing MMOs since RuneScape, and it all comes down to you either need to have a hell of a lot of time or a lot of willpower to just say, I'm only going to play a little bit today.
All right. Moving on from the Final Fantasy 14 news, we also had some news drop that Cloud Strife was going to be making an appearance in the new Super Smash Bros. Game. I'll be including a link to the trailer. And shout out to Flint for his terrific article on the Lifestream, which I'll also include in the show notes here, breaking down the trailer. Flint, you want to talk a little bit about it?
I can. What do you want to know?
Break it down for us. You don't have to go into a lot of detail, Flint.
I should also give a shout out to my real life friend Nick, who very kindly stayed up late into the night with me analysing the trailer because he's a big Smash expert, whereas I'm a big Final Fantasy 7 expert. So between the two of us, we got an article out pretty quickly. Yeah, there was obviously a ton of Final Fantasy 7 references in there. A lot of the mechanics are still quite unclear, like how the summons work, for example, how the limit break works.
The summon is a stage effect. I'm sure of that. There's no way that's, unless it's going to be an individual item, there's basically no way that it's going to be something he does unless it's part of his final smash. Now, from Ryu joining, it's possible to have variable final smashes, but I don't think that's what he's doing. I think it's a stage effect.
The thing that was a bit unclear was the way that the summon materia seems to float around the stage in Midgar, and then Cloud actually had a summoning animation just before Odin appeared on the screen. And if it was just a random stage effect, then it probably wouldn't do that. But there's speculation that Nintendo will announce something more about the game as soon as tomorrow, so maybe we'll find out then.
Yeah, what I think it is rather than a straight stage effect, it's a sort of like Ridley, in that it's going to be sort of like the Smash Ball. It's going to be something that appears in the stage, you have to scramble for it, and then it becomes your ally. So it's basically a stage-specific Pokeball. That's my theory, anyways.
Yeah, I think that's quite likely.
So
then again, I don't really know anything about the game.
So. Me neither. I've never played any of the Smash Brothers games. I mean, is it possible that it could be some kind of executed special move, a la, what you would see in like a Mortal Kombat?
Too powerful, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely too good to not be item related, either as part of his final smash or as part of a random drop on the stage. Plus, I don't think that's going to be his gimmick because they've already done the command inputs for Ryu. I think Cloud's gimmick is going to be that he's going to be able to charge up his meter and use limit breaks as stronger versions of his regular attacks. But I don't know exactly how they're going to do that, if it's going to be damage inflicted, damage taken, or something he can just manually charge over time.
So I mean, is this a straight fighter game in the style of all the other fighter games, like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, that kind of thing?
It's more along the lines. It's created its own kind of genre, often called spectacle fighter, where basically the objective is, it's like sumo wrestling, but with very simple button combinations that create insanely powerful attacks. The objective is not to whittle down a person's health unless you're playing a health match. Generally speaking, the standard game is get their damage as high as possible, then you can knock them out of the ring.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Incidentally, that gaming shopping list we've been discussing, add Super Smash Bros. Melee to it. It's on GameCube. Play it.
Or Smash 4. It's really good. And it'll have Cloud soon.
Okay. We also had a announcement on Square Enix announced a Final Fantasy Explorers Collector's Edition, which can only be ordered through the Square Enix store. For those interested in picking up the game, it includes a 32-page.
No one.
It includes a 32-page art book, including illustrations from renowned artist Yoshitaka Amano. I'm going to ask for your help, Ryu.
The song, so Gin Kobayashi and Toshiyuki Itahama are also, and then I'll join you for the next name.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Take the next
Songs
one.
for the Journey, a 20-track music soundtrack sampler comprised of tracks by celebrated composer Tsuyoshi Sekito.
Thank you. There's a themed Final Fantasy Explorers Nintendo 3DS hard case. Exclusive box packaging featuring the artwork of series concept artist Yoshitaka Amano. The collector's edition will also include codes exclusive to the Western release to unlock in-game quests that allow players to obtain a set of legendary Final Fantasy weapons, such as the Venus Gospel from Final Fantasy VII, the Death Penalty from Dirge of Cerberus, Crimson Blitz from Lightning Returns, and Thyrus from Final Fantasy XIV. And I will also link up the store link so that you guys can check it out if you're interested in picking that up.
Nope.
Square Enix also
It's interesting how...
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's interesting how Square Enix seem to be focusing on Nintendo quite a lot at the moment, with this Explorers game being a Nintendo 3DS exclusive for the time being, and obviously Cloud appearing and Smash Brothers, which took everyone by surprise.
It isn't.
It's led to a lot of speculation that the Final Fantasy remake is going to eventually appear on a Nintendo console as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that. It's... I wonder if Square is looking to see if a partnership with Nintendo will end up bearing fruit for them.
I think it's probably already bearing fruit. I mean, I mentioned my friend Nick, who is a Smash Brothers expert. He's now already on his second playthrough of Final Fantasy VII, bought from Steam as a result of Cloud appearing in the game.
No kidding. So he had never played it before?
He's never played any Final Fantasy game before.
Very cool. Square Enix also announced that there's going to be 21 different job classes for the Final Fantasy Explorers game. And I do think I am going to pick up Explorers, but that's mainly because I'm such a huge Final Fantasy nut. So I will ultimately probably end up playing it after we finish our retrospective roadmap here. So Ryu and JT, we may end up throwing that into the roadmap.
Won't be for a while, so that's more than fine.
It'll be quite a while. Yeah.
Like I said before, if we're throwing that in, we got to throw in Ehrgeist. Just gonna say, while we're talking about Cloud and Super Smash Brothers, let's not forget the original Final Fantasy fighter, which only a handful of people I ever talked to actually know existed. So
I remember when Ehrgeist.
That's the first time I ever heard that name.
Oh my god! Okay, so just real quick, I'll be as brief as I can because I know we got a lot of stuff to go over. Ehrgeist was a PlayStation 1 game that was it was kind of an all-in-one type of game. It had an arcade-style fighter which featured Cloud, Tifa, and Sephiroth as main characters, and Vincent, Zack, Yuffie. Vincent, Zack, and Yuffie as unlockable characters, they were hidden in the game. It also had a action RPG and a bunch of tiny little party games, including an Othello type game and a really bad beach game that you basically press buttons and mash and so forth. But it was insanely fun for what it was. It was just a little bit of everything. And it's I think it's an understated gem of the PS1 era, so you all should look it up.
I've played it before. After Final Fantasy VII came out, one of my friends ended up buying Ehrgeist when it came out as well, just based on the fact that he loved Final Fantasy VII so much, and he brought it over and we played it a little bit. We mostly played the fighter portion of it. I didn't even realize there was an RPG portion of it. So
it's a very, very mediocre action RPG, but again, it was they kind of went for quantity over quality with that game. But I still like it because it's got that kind of, the charm of the mediocre, I guess is what you would call it.
All right, so next piece of news here, we had Square Enix has released several Dissidia Final Fantasy character battle spotlight trailers, all of which will be, again, linked to the show notes. They did release trailers for Cloud, Strife, Titus, Zidane, Squall, the Warrior of Light from Final Fantasy I, Cecil Harvey, Vaughn, Shantoto, Furion, the Onion Knight, Terra and Bart's. And did any of you watch any of these trailers?
I watched a couple.
I watched the Cloud.
I need to watch the rest.
Yeah, I watched the Cloud one and the Titus one. I haven't watched all of them yet.
I watched one that somebody here shared on Facebook. That was the one with like the Japanese names, Butts and Fiorani and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
I watched that like halfway through, but I mean, I played the first Dissidia and it was okay, but I can only get so excited about a game I might not even see.
Well, I think this is going to be something completely... It looks like it's something completely different from the Dissidia games that were released for PSP. I could be mistaken, but I think it looks sharp. I hope we do see a Western release of it.
If it's a Western release, I'll be all over that, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Last couple of pieces of news that I wanted to go over here. Just give a real quick retrospective series update. JT, you want to start with where you're at on Final Fantasy 3?
Yeah, after a bit of fumbling around and getting used to the job system, I've made my way through Tosis up to the Viking Cove, which is basically the middle beginning of the game, from what I can tell.
That's a good way to put it.
The middle beginning, an equivalent point would be I'm out of Midgar if you're using Final Fantasy VII terminology. But you know, it's fun. I've had a lot of fun with the job system, and it's job system, which is automatically good. It's not as refined as 5's, of course, but it's still pretty good.
Much funner than Final Fantasy 2. That's all I got to say.
Dude, let's not go there again.
Was that your Mr. Ed impression, JT?
Oh, a horse is a horse, of course.
Ryu, how about you? Where are you at?
I'm just before getting the third crystal, so ahead of you guys. I've already fought everything on the starting map, basically, and I'm about to head off of it. Spoilers! You're on a floating island.
I'm actually in the same spot JT's at. In fact, he's just a little bit ahead of me. I just made it out of the Viking Cove, and I haven't actually played since before the Thanksgiving break, but I do plan to get back into it here just as soon as things slow down a little bit for me here. So hopefully we'll be on track to get this thing finished up in January here, so we can get the next episode in.
I plan on playing at least a couple hours tonight, trying to get up through the Gold Mansion, which doesn't mean anything to you now if you're, playing blind. But it's like another 3 dungeons ahead.
Last piece of news here. I wanted to give Flint a chance to just give us a brief update on the music bracket contest.
Well, the first thing to say is that Jason and I were joined by Lex and Goroto yesterday for a brief chat about the Final 32. That should be uploaded to the front page of TheLifestream.net quite soon. Into the final knockout stage of the tournament now, and the first 4 polls in that stage closed earlier today. There's 4 new ones going up every day at the moment, and we should have a final ranking and number 1 Final Fantasy song crowned within a couple of weeks.
He also did this, we did this bracket thing, March Madness.
Yeah.
Except, win any money for getting it right. It has been very exciting. I mean, one of the round of 32 was Blinded by Light and Roses of May, and Blinded by Light was ahead most of the time, and then suddenly Roses of May just went past it and won.
I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, which
by
I was very disappointed with.
Yeah, that surprised me. I mean, because it was so. I mean, it was leading, then it was neck and neck for a good long while, and then all of a sudden, just 9 Final Fantasy IX fans just signed up and just
Flint, has anything surprised you in particular about how things have turned out?
I suppose I probably shouldn't have been surprised by how many Final Fantasy VII songs have got this far, but somehow I was still surprised. We've lost many games from the Reckoning altogether, and Final Fantasy 4 is being knocked out at this stage. Final Fantasy 13 is being knocked out. Final Fantasy 12 is probably going to be knocked out at this stage. We're basically going to end up with a last 16 of games from Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and a couple from elsewhere. So it's really been a focus on the PlayStation generation, with 7 shining in particular.
I think it's 7 and 9. But I think it's 7 from 7 and 6 from 9.
I guess it's not so surprising.
Is that your prediction?
No, I mean from the songs that are left to the top 16. There's probably gonna be like 7 and 6. So those are the 2 games that have the most songs right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's not so surprising given the fact that I think a lot of people feel like the 3 Final Fantasies that were released for PlayStation are kind of widely regarded and held close to people's hearts. So I guess that doesn't really surprise me at all.
Yeah, but then if you look at things like the Distant Worlds selection of music, another thing that's somewhat surprised me is that songs which have appeared on those concerts and CDs have also done quite badly in this event, like the Masker Esther Sand from Final Fantasy 12, for example.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of assumed that any song that made it into a Distant Worlds concert was going to be a fan favorite, and for that song in particular, I really like it, and I thought other people did, and it just didn't even get through the first round. Got 4 votes or something like that.
That's amazing.
It's tricky because, I mean, again, it's all subjective, and a lot of times the music composers have preferences of music that the fans don't care for, and you know, especially in a competition like this, you've got people voting against their own personal favorites for the purpose of doing tactical votes. I'm looking at you, Lex, because they feel like their personal favorites aren't going to go further. No, straight up, he actually said that's what he was doing earlier. And I feel like, you know, when you had, like, especially in like the earlier rounds, I had a lot of songs that I nominated, which I did not vote for because, for one, I knew they weren't going to win, and they weren't as good as so many of the other songs. It's just like, I've said it like 90 times now, but I'm going to say it again. It's like choosing your favorite children. It's an impossible task.
I've got a favorite child. What are you talking about?
It's not his. Not yet.
Why don't you have a seat right there, Flint?
The interesting is, one of the rounds that surprised me was Sarnakin and the man with the machine gun. I listened to the song because I never had listened to it before, and I do not see why people love it so much. It almost beat Sarnakin until Sarnakin suddenly, much like Roses of May, suddenly exploded. Like every single Final Fantasy X fan suddenly realized, oh, the song is gonna lose, and let's go vote for it.
That poll is still open as of recording and could still change.
No, Sarnakin is a million times better than that song, The Man with the Machine Gun.
Agreed. I just don't. The Man with the Machine Gun sounds like a bunch of trash pop dance music and bleh.
But that's why it's so amazing. Come on, man. It's like freaking, I could dance to this freaking battle theme, man. Are you kidding me?
I can dance to Nine Inch Nails, too.
It
Okay, but I'm
doesn't
not
even
gonna
mean
touch
band,
that one.
just the sound of nails being hammered into a board.
On Ecstasy, you can dance to anything. I'm just gonna say that right there, but whatever.
Wow. Okay.
That went dark. Anyways, no, I feel like, again, I know that I'm voting not only for the ones that I have the personal nostalgia favor for, but I'm voting for
you voted for Man with the Machine Gun, sir.
Well, I have a huge nostalgic attachment to Xanarkin too, because, I mean, keep in mind, like I mentioned on my holiday thing, like the first glimpse I got of Final Fantasy X, which I think is an amazing game, and I consider it the end of the Final Fantasy Golden era that began with 4 and ended with 10.
Ended with 12.
I respectfully disagree, sir.
Listen, it ended with 2, and no.
Unless you're talking like golden showers, then different kind of gold there, buddy.
Well, I'm not. I didn't want to bring your fetishes into it, but you went there.
Oh, we're getting way off track.
Do we ever stay on track?
Do we ever? That's a good point. Do we ever stay on track on this pod?
Do we have a track? If we're honest with ourselves.
Okay, so
man.
yeah, that wraps up our little news piece. And again, Flint did like he mentioned, do a special kind of preview episode for the final 32 in the music bracket, and we will be posting that up on the Lifestream website shortly. So I will actually link to that in the show notes once that gets posted up as well.
Yeah, by the time this episode is published, then that one will have been up for a few days already, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully it'll go up tonight or tomorrow. So either as you're listening, either the 2nd or the 3rd, hopefully. So,
I have an idea. Whoever wins like the prediction bracket has to decide for Flynn to do something that he really doesn't want to do because it'll be really fucking funny.
I'd better win then.
Well, then but what if Lex wins? No.
That would be very bad for Flynn.
Yeah.
Lex will probably just make me play Final Fantasy 14 or something.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so moving into the main topic of discussion for this evening, I thought since we were heading into some of the winter conventions that we might talk a little bit about our expectations for announcements for the Final Fantasy VII Remake that'll be coming from those conventions. That'd be something fun to discuss. I'll just open this up to the floor. Whoever wants to go for it.
Let's see some Final Fantasy VII Remake news, and let's have it be actually news. Because we are still operating on a couple of interviews and the trailer, and I think it's kind of obvious they're going to release news of that, and if they don't, they're insane. But they've already given us tidbits through the interviews, so I'm hoping that we're going to get something substantial.
I'd like to see some, even if they're really early stage, I'd like to see some in-game screenshots.
I agree.
I want to see the new battle system. I want to make sure that Cloud is still going to be in a dress. The important things.
I really doubt we're going to see anything that advanced.
No.
I'm always a bit skeptical about this kind of thing, but there'll be interviews. There might be some more promotional stuff, but as for in-game, forget it.
I don't expect to see actual movie anything, but I'd like to see, even if they're mock-ups, like a screenshot of what they expect it to look like, because they can't do much with the story unless they decide to pull a Final Fantasy III and actually add new characters into the remake.
You mean add characters?
The new characters are adding characters in the form. You're right. In the case of 3, they had to add characters because they did not start with actual characters when 3 first came out. But yeah, so ideally we'd want them to keep as much of the original plot as possible. So most of my concerns are like, how are they going to portray that? What's the combat system going to be like? Are we going to have a fixed camera again, or go to rotating camera like has been standard for practically all of the games except in specific areas? Maybe they'll do a mix of both.
Do you think that we might get some concept artwork for perhaps what like the world maps might look like?
If there was even going to be a world map.
Well, they're
I think there will still be a world map. It might not be a like a full world map, but at the very least, they'll have a 10-2 style, hot points map.
Or I'm just thinking if they're putting all this energy into developing an overworld system for 15, Square's not one to abandon a good trick. They might utilize a similar feature for the 7 remake, although on a much smaller scale.
Yeah. So that brings into the thought that if they do have a world map, are they going to, continue to make the world square, or are they going to make it a globe?
I would like to hope that they would make it into a globe.
Yeah.
That would involve some serious distortion of the continents.
Not necessarily.
Yes.
Yes.
Because the way that the world maps wrap in most Final Fantasy games, or probably all of them actually, is toroidal, in that if you go to the north, you end up at the south. If you go to the east, you end up at the west. So to stretch that into an actual sphere, well, they might not need to like change the actual relative locations of things, but some land masses would have to get a lot bigger or smaller, or they're just going to be a whole lot of empty ocean.
I think what they can do is shrink down the far north and the far south, because most of Null's Pole that's on the map, for example, you can't ever actually interact with on the world map. Most of that is the Great Glacier, and you can't land on it. You can't, walk through it. You go back into the Great Glacier, field map instead of the world map. So they can definitely resculpt their land masses, and honestly, they probably should a little, because as it stands, the Sister Ray, back when it was the Junon canon, was incredibly stupid, because it was pointed primarily at Shinra's own assets, and had to swerve itself pretty far, to the side, even assuming that it can, fire ballistically, to be able to hit Wutai, which is the only thing that it would have any real reason to shoot at.
Maybe it's there as a just-in-case measure.
Or as a dick measuring contest.
For fighting a naval... I'm sorry?
Or it's just a dick measuring contest.
I mean, yeah. Well,
this is
I thought
Shinra.
that was a gimme. Yeah.
I mean, everything is a dick measuring contest with Shinra at some point. It's just sort of, they try and pretend it's not sometimes.
Just look at Shinra Tower.
Or Sephiroth's sword.
Good point. As far as the whole Euclidean versus non-Euclidean, sphere versus square, there's actually a pretty cool app, which is on the Android App Store, called Moogle Earth, which is the Final Fantasy VII world done as a sphere and done like a Google Maps style thing. It handles it relatively well, but the way they kind of cheat, they just turn the continents into supercontinents, where basically the reason you're going from north to south is because that supercontinent is covering half the map.
I mean, that's about how it seems anyways.
Yeah, so I mean, like I say, it's if you're going to go globish, either create like a Pangea type situation or don't.
Yeah, they might need to invent more land masses, because even assuming that, we're not getting most of the settlements and whatnot that are there, a lot of the scale just seems a little off for a globe, with just certain land masses just seem to be unreasonably large, and I know that's sort of weird sounding, but it's sort of like the just the size of rivers and lakes just seems excessive if we're seeing the whole globe.
Have you ever heard of a continent called Asia?
I'm aware of Asia. It's not the size of the continent. It's the size
how you use it.
Yes. It's the size of the ocean in the continent. Because some of the lakes on the world map of Final Fantasy VII are literally oceanic in scale if mapped to a normal sized Earth.
Yeah. You guys are talking over my head. I don't understand scale very well, so something that I thought might be interesting for them to show off. I mean, my understanding is that this has been in development for a while now, right? It's been about a year when they had announced it, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, surely they can show off some of maybe a summon or some of the way that the magic is going to look in the game.
If they show Gold Saucer, man, I'm just gonna lose it. I'm just gonna. I've made it abundantly clear that Gold Saucer is like I'm a sucker for minigames almost as much as I'm a sucker for the music of the series, and I can't wait to see what they do with it.
I wonder if some of those minigames may end up on the cutting room floor, unfortunately.
They are probably going to at least utilize the assets that they've got already pre-constructed for like Final Fantasy 14, because there's no reason not to include them. Because 14 actually has a gold saucer in it. So
what all minigames are in the 14 gold saucer?
You've got a Mario Kart style chocobo racing. You've got triple triad. You've got various stage activities, which are probably more attuned to MMOs, which probably won't be copied over. And you've got little magical hot timing buttons, button mashing games like Kuffaker and basketball shooting game and stuff like that. And there's rumors, apparently there have been for almost a year now, that they're going to at some point add Blitzball. But, again, that's still uncertain at this point.
Could they make a feasible submarine game or a feasible snowboarding game for the Final Fantasy VII remake?
They could even.
There's no way they're not doing the snowboarding game.
Yeah, that's the most popular game in Japan. They had that game by itself ported to mobile phones over there. They love the snowboarding game there, and we love it over here. I mean, there's no reason for them.
All of a sudden, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm like I agree with Ryu. There's no reason for them not to do those two games, even if they had simply an HD remastered version of the games that were already there. The fans would still love it, but I imagine they'll probably expand the snowboarding game into a sort of SSX style-ish thing. Very, very, very.
That's actually what I was getting ready to say.
Very cut down SSX, obviously. I'm not expecting it to be like a freaking EA Games style SSX trick. I'm just talking about they'll probably have more features, more like they'll add tricks and stuff like that. And as far as the submarine game, like I say, I mean, I'd be happy with just an HD remaster of the game we got. That was fun by itself. Oh,
it doesn't hold up very well though. It looks like shit.
But there's a lot of,
especially when you're playing on a big screen TV.
But hey, come on, let's not forget the best game there. You've got to have
arm wrestling.
Well, I was gonna say the Mog House.
Oh yes, Mog House.
Yeah. That should be something fairly easy.
It needs to be a mandatory, unskippable cutscene.
You will make the Smog fall in love.
Or you will lose.
I really would like for them to announce that the summon animations can be skippable.
Oh yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that one's going to be automatic.
I mean, can you imagine having to sit through a 10-minute Knights of the Round casting in HD over and over and over again?
Yes, I can.
It's not 10 minutes.
I have. It's called playing Final Fantasy VII.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. I'm sorry, Flint, did you say something?
I said that it's not 10 minutes. It's maybe not even 1 minute.
No, I'm exaggerating.
I don't know. The thing is, Knights of the Round is ridiculously powerful. It will kill almost anything in the game, and having to sit through that long animation is, in my opinion, the price you have to pay for getting that much power. Because there's so many more interesting strategies, and if you're just going to quick spam Knights of the Round and just skip the animation all the time, then all that intricate strategy is going to go out the window. I'm not being entirely serious. I don't think anyone actually plans their battles based on how long they're going to have to wait for an animation, but
I think it's also just, I mean, for me, part of the fun is just seeing the damage go up. And like every single hit, it's like, that did 6,000 damage, that did 6,000 damage, that did 6,000, that did 7,000 damage. And like the reason it's there is because you're seeing each individual hit, just like with Cloud's Omni Slash, albeit Omni Slash is like 25 seconds. But I mean, I don't mind sitting through that, but I would like if they took a Final Fantasy IX approach where once in a while you'll see the full summon, but usually you'll see them just throw down the weapon, it'll take 5 seconds.
So you want regular and critical summons?
Pretty much. I mean, that'd be, for one thing, that would add a little bit of a layer of strategy to it, especially if they added accessories.
Well, that's pretty much what Odin is in Final Fantasy VII anyway.
Sort of. It's less of a critical and more of a backup, because he's actually programmed to not do his insta-kill attack if anything in the enemy party could resist it. But I know what you mean.
Interesting.
One thing I just realized, because I know we've been talking about it a while ago, when they're talking about how they're bringing PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility to the PS4, and the developers have been talking about how there's going to be a lot more content with this and how it's going to be sort of a compilation into itself. It'd be interesting, and this I could be wrong, I probably am wrong, but it'd be interesting if what they were planning was, along with the download or the physical copy of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, if you get with that free download codes for, say, the Dirge of Cerberus and maybe if they end up doing PSP compatibility for like Crisis Core or what have you, so you can get the compilation that way instead of actually adding.
That
it
might
to
be
the
the only way I would ever own a second copy of Dirge of Cerberus, is if they gave it away for free.
Could they work on the combat in Dirge as well? Because it needs work.
That's putting it lightly, Ryu.
I mean,
that's putting it kindly.
It's putting it simply, because I could go into detail and we'd be here a long time.
It was.
Oh, we're gonna get to that eventually with the roadmaps.
I'm sure we will. Yeah. I will say that I liked that game for what it was, but yeah, gameplay is a little bit iffy. I like they were going for Devil May Cry, but they missed. Carlie, what about you? You've been kind of quiet.
Yeah, should have been very quiet.
Yeah, you guys, you were talking and talking and talking. It's like, just.
But you're our Final Fantasy VII expert. We need you to chime in on this.
if you don't give
shots fired
Final Fantasy VII, we won't know what to think.
My friend, I sense some sarcasm there.
I'm never sarcastic.
No,
It's just not in a British person's nature to be sarcastic.
I think they took that out of you when you went to Finland.
No.
Yeah.
Still got
you used
it.
to not be sarcastic, but now that's finished.
Oh.
Bun corner. Go to your bun corner. Think about what you've done.
I can't even laugh at that anymore. I've heard it like a million times already.
Flint is actually staring at his screen, just giving it the big middle finger, JT.
I am a father. I have been developing this skill for years in preparation for having a child. Bad puns are in my nature.
Are those intended to embarrass said child in front of their friends?
No. My physical appearance is meant to embarrass the child. That's just the spicing on the cake.
JT,
I don't.
Come on.
Look, I'm not. It's not a low self-esteem thing. It is I am aware of my strengths as a person, and being silly is my strength.
Well, now that we've
this turned into an after-school special. For God's sake,
that's exactly
come
what I was
on.
getting ready to say. Now that we've had our after-school special, back to you, Carlie.
What was it?
we were asking you for your thoughts on what you'd like to see.
This may be the most disjointed episode we've ever had. That's saying a lot.
No, it isn't. That's damning with faint praise.
I would like I would like to see some Kingdom Hearts stuff, because I love Kingdom Hearts. And I haven't seen anything from Kingdom Hearts since E3, and that's what was like 6 months ago. I would like to see some Final Fantasy 15 stuff.
I'm almost certain that's going to happen.
And I would like to see some Final Fantasy VII Remake stuff, because that will make everyone very happy. And that's always funny when people here get really excited over the remake. And I would not like to see them get on the stage and announce a future announcement, or troll people with like a stupid port about something and pretend like this is a remake or something. Although that would be hilarious and we will have material for a long time.
All of a sudden they're trolling people with Final Fantasy X-3.
I mean, at this point,
the
biggest troll that they can do is just go, yeah, the new column, that's totally what happened. We're making a game out of it.
Well, the audio drama, the freaking will that came with the HD remaster, I listened to it, and I've said it before, it sounds like poorly written fan fiction, and everyone was saying, oh my goodness, 10.3 is going to happen, it's going to be based on this. I'm like, God, I hope not.
No, you know what it was what that is. It's fuck you fiction. It was literally written to say as a big middle finger to the fans.
What if
it's the you wanted me to bring Titus back and then you weren't happy that I brought Titus back? Well, fuck you.
What if 10-3 was a prequel instead of a sequel?
I would like 10-3 to be Riku fixes all the shit.
Actually, we could end up with a prequel for the Final Fantasy X series in the form of Final Fantasy VII remake. They could actually make that connection official finally.
Though that's not a prequel. That takes place after the 10 and 10-2.
Oh yeah, that's true. My bad.
Okay, see.
No, it's a prequel because what happens is they're going to the other place, but then they get caught in the time compression from Final Fantasy VIII, end up in Terra from Final Fantasy IX. Garland reroutes them through the universe, and they wind up in Final Fantasy II, and they eventually evolve through 4, 5, and 6 until eventually they become the world of Final Fantasy VII. And then there's an audio drama explaining that Aerith isn't really dead.
Yeah, she's a summoned monster.
In Smash Brothers.
You lost me on Final Fantasy.
Well, no, she's Tifa's final Aeon. That's what it was, right? I mean...
Oh, God.
Okay, see, here's my idea of what they could troll this year. They would go on stage and show this, like, Final Fantasy 12 after, I don't remember the exact year that it came out. I think it was 2005.
2000. Yeah, it might have been 05. It was definitely before I got married to my wife, so it probably was 05.
So after 10 years, Final Fantasy 12 is finally coming to the PS4, and people like Pangu go, "Oh my god, that's so amazing!" And then it comes to line when you emulate your PS2 games to the PS4.
That would be awesome.
But I will say this much: if they at least gave us the Zodiac job system, it would be worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, I would be all in for that. I would be basically offering up my wallet saying, "Fuck you, take my money." So take all of my money.
What you're saying, Jason, is that
I will
there is a
take
good
all of
Final
your
Fantasy
money.
12 game.
No, I'm not saying that 12 was a bad game. I do not think 12 was a bad game. I do not think the 13 trilogy was terrible games. I really like the second two, and the 13, the game is kind of iffy, but the story is amazing. I don't think they're bad games, but I don't think they belong in the golden era. In the same way that with Disney's golden era, I have no problem with, say, Tangled, but it's no Lion King. I have no problem with Frozen, except for on principle as a father, but it is no Beauty and the Beast. That's what I feel 4 through 10 are. Whether or not you like 8 is a matter of personal opinion, but 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10, I think pretty much everybody agrees are very solid Final Fantasy games, and pretty much the core...
I don't.
What?
I prefer... I would prefer 12 any day to 10.
I think you're kind of in the minority on that, Carlie.
I'm ambivalent.
I mentioned this before. As the year has passed, Final Fantasy 12 have actually gotten more popular.
See, I mean, I like Final Fantasy 12. I wouldn't, at this point in time, I wouldn't say that I liked it any more than Final Fantasy 10. Probably about on the same level. I may change my mind when we actually play through it on the retrospective. But I didn't think 12 was that awful of a game, and I don't understand why so many people disliked it. But we're getting off track, so.
Yeah, like I said, I don't dislike it.
It would be
just not as good as the others for me.
It would be awesome if they announced that 12 is getting an HD remaster. That would be awesome for them to confirm that.
Hear Fangu scream in joy from here.
Oh yeah. Are your ears bleeding?
I know Flint's are.
Yeah.
I would just like it if we could have one gaming event where Square Enix do not announce a new port of the original Final Fantasy VII. I think that would be a major milestone for them.
You're right.
Yes,
so they're announcing a new port of Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh God, dude, back away. You don't have enough stamina for the fight. Okay.
I do.
Now coming
no,
to
here's what they're going to announce.
I have 255 E&D.
God. they're going to announce a port of Final Fantasy, the original Final Fantasy, for the Pip-Boy you can get if you pre-ordered Fallout 4.
Oh, God.
They already did, because it's on cell phones, and the Pip-Boy is just a cell phone holder.
They're not technically lying, then.
Yes. No. What it is they're going to release a Final Fantasy VIII Pachi slot.
Fuck you.
That they're co-producing with Konami.
Fuck you. Fuck you for even suggesting it.
Chocobo's Dungeon Pachinko Machine.
No.
I think I made that joke last time, but whatever.
It's not evil enough. We have to go even further.
No, we don't.
We want to go deeper.
That's Carlie's catchphrase.
So I think we just hit TLS after dark.
God.
And by Flint, not by Ryu, not by Jason, not by me. Flint.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go now. See you next week.
Bravo.
Holy shit. Yeah, so on a more serious note, I think I would like to see some damn Bravely Default 2 news at whatever winter conventions are rolling around here. We haven't seen anything about Bravely Second in quite a while, so would like for them to finally give us a release date for the West.
And that's about time that I think that one of the other offshoot companies for these little Android phone app developers is going to be releasing a knockoff game, Courageously Standard. I cannot tell you how many times I go searching for like a Final Fantasy game or something related to the Final Fantasy on the Android marketplace, and I see these dozens upon dozens of knockoffs. It's just so sad.
You should add them to your retrospective roadmap.
Oh, yeah.
As if we don't have enough to play already.
We're adding. Well, we could actually add Last Story. That is the closest you're going to get to a real Final Fantasy knockoff that's good.
Flint didn't say it had to be good. He just said we needed to have.
No. I'm just saying that the Last Story is technically it's a Final Fantasy knockoff, but it's made by the people who made Final Fantasy. So there's a reason it's called The Last Story.
For sure.
Oh boy.
You mean like Final Fantasy?
Why, that's it exactly. How clever of you to have figured that out.
Ryu, you sound...
That's what I'm here for.
You sound slightly butthurt someone figured it out.
We were going to leave that to the listeners as homework, but I just spoiled it for them.
I think it's not that I'm butthurt. I think it's just that it's sort of I'm slightly offended at the people who named it, thinking they were clever. Because it's a good game, but it's just sort of the we know, we get it. No, it's not funny. We just we understand the joke. It's just You know, sort of like how your kid is going to respond to all of your jokes in a couple years.
Yes, no. She already has her mother's attitude, and just like it's hilarious because sometimes I will, like, whenever I try to be playing with her in the morning and like trying to get her all excited for the morning, she's not a morning person, so she has the exact same death glare as my wife.
Okay. Anybody else got anything that they would like to see as far as announcements are concerned? I will take that as a no. All right, so I think we can close up that discussion here real quick. I do want to get to some listener feedback because we had quite a bit of it. We don't have to go through all of it this episode. But I do want to get to a couple pieces of this. We'll go ahead and start. We'll go ahead and start with this email from Sophia.
Sophia says, "Hello, Lifestream. I have to admit that I'm very disappointed with the latest versions of Final Fantasy. I constantly hear my friends complain about the way new Final Fantasy games are, and that maybe this is the end for Final Fantasy. They are very different from the Final Fantasy we were used to back then from 1997 when Final Fantasy VII was released. I think that after Final Fantasy X, all versions of Final Fantasy pretty much have 1,000 flaws. Gotta disagree again. The stories aren't as good, the gameplay isn't as good, the music is very different and worse in my opinion. It's hard to even recognise the games as Final Fantasy. They are something different. If you start to change one thing after another, soon it will become something totally different, and that's how the new Final Fantasy feels like. It doesn't feel like Final Fantasy at all. You put a lot of small side quests and extras, but you don't really need to fill the game with so many irrelevant things. You just need a really good story. Take ideas from the old successful games, see how they're built, and what made them so perfect that people love them so much even today. You don't have to build the same thing, but it has to contain every essential cornerstone that makes Final Fantasy Final Fantasy. All the best, Sophia.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from, Sophia. I don't know. I guess if you're referring to Final Fantasy 15 specifically about not feeling like a Final Fantasy, I gotta disagree. I actually think Final Fantasy 15 does feel very much like a Final Fantasy. And I don't know if you've had a chance to play Final Fantasy 14 at all, but my understanding is it's very heavy on the classic Final Fantasy references. So, I don't know. I think you need to give some of these latter games another chance.
It's about, because again, there is that whole golden age that everyone has, and maybe for you it isn't 14, maybe it's the earlier games. But I mean, having played a vast chunk, most of the main series games and a few of the side games, Final Fantasy is a evolving beast, and admittedly, I prefer some of the middle games, like the games that you were talking about, Sophia. Like I said, 4 through 10 are like my top games. But, what 12 does, for instance, with it going for the more open world feel, it still links to Final Fantasy's lore, the culture, the whole idea of like the Evil East side games, like in Tactics and Tactics Advance. With Final Fantasy 13, admittedly a brazenly different direction, but you still got key elements. You've got the crystals, you've got the idea of the underdog party saving the world, you've got hopelessness against chaos. I mean, these are recurring themes, and I agree with you about the music because I prefer Uematsu, and I think most of us like Uematsu's work. But again, I completely understand the mindset of this is different and it doesn't feel like Final Fantasy. And for a while, a lot of these games were like, this doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy game. But when you get right down to it, Final Fantasy isn't the recurring themes, the recurring elements. Final Fantasy is kind of a unique beast in that it's the sum of its parts more than the parts themselves.
I guess I sort of understand from the standpoint that it seems like the longer the series has gone on, it's definitely gone away from its JRPG roots, which I think a lot of people who started with the Final Fantasy series in the early going still kind of hold true to the JRPG roots of the games. And while it does bother me that they've gone away so much from the JRPG roots, I still find myself excited about each new Final Fantasy release, and I always can find something that I enjoyed about them, regardless of whether or not I enjoyed them on the whole or not. I know Final Fantasy 13 got a lot of bad reviews, but I feel like even it had its solid good points. So I mean,
the story, is probably one of the best in the franchise.
And some of the music isn't half bad either. And I love the battle system. The battle system's a great deal of fun. But
can I just throw a question out there on the topic?
Sure.
How many of us here have, in the last couple of years, played a JRPG that wasn't Final Fantasy? And
in the last couple of years?
I have.
In the last couple of years?
I have.
Yeah.
Carl, so, which one did you play, Carlie?
Persona 4.
Okay, and did you feel like that had moved away from JRPG roots, or has that series been innovating?
See, here's the problem. That's the only Persona game I played. But they do have like this active battle system, but also kind of it's a mix. They're not afraid to update and move from what they used to do before. That is a very contagious thing in their fandom. People argue all the time if the Persona games now, especially 4, because it's turned into a cash cow, is better or the earlier ones are better. But it's great.
Yeah, I was just wondering that, what is the state of JRPGs nowadays? Because often when I hear people lament the move away from traditional JRPGs that the Final Fantasy series has made, I think, well, you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over for 20, 30 years.
There's also no such thing as the traditional JRPG. There have been variations on it as long as there's been the genre.
Yeah, but Ryu, a lot of what people refer to as traditional RPG roots are very much similar, very much the same. Turn-based combat, the 2D overworld maps, things of that nature. Those are very much tropes of JRPGs.
Yes, but very quickly, early on in the days of JRPGs, there were JRPGs that were unquestionably JRPGs that would sacrifice any or all of those for, the Tales of series. That is from the Super Nintendo days, and that has a fighting game for battles instead of the traditional interface, and that's considered one of the J-est of the RPGs.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with what you're trying to say, Ryu. I'm just saying I think that's the gist of what most people feel. It's classic JRPG tropes are, the turn-based battle system, the sprites, the 2D overworld maps, things of that nature. That the Final Fantasy games have obviously departed quite some time ago. But
there's.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. There's that element that, to quote a Jake and Amir episode, it's different, which means it's bad, which means I'm pissed. But more importantly, I feel like on the side of the people who are upset that it's moving away, we all like innovation as gamers, but just because you are innovating doesn't mean you are making something good. For a perfect example of that, look at Final Fantasy II.
Except they did make something good out of it.
Well, okay, but not Final Fantasy II.
That is heavily subjective, sir.
Final Fantasy III became... Final Fantasy III turned into the job system, which became a staple, not a every game kind of staple, but a staple of the series. That was innovating in the right direction. Final Fantasy II...
though they still got it wrong, I think. They didn't get it right until 5.
Well, yeah,
the version that you're playing borrowed back from 5.
Well, fair point, but again, like I'm saying, with 2 was the seed that led to something good, and in the more recent case, Final Fantasy XIII's battle system, I didn't care for it until they tweaked it in 13.2, and then I'm like, this is amazing. So I think
13.2 was a definite improvement over 13, yes, mechanically.
It's possible to have innovation and fail the first time around, but eventually get it right, and I feel like when when 15 comes and, we're all hoping it blows us out of the water, I feel like a lot of those are going to be, not throw aside, but a lot of times the gamers who are like bashing 13 haven't played the sequels because they hated 13 so much. So
I think a lot of people who are bashing it, A, have never played it, and B, are just on a bandwagon. Because the bandwagon effect is fucking ludicrous on the internet.
Yeah, hipster.
Yeah. So there's that element too.
Yeah.
If you say hipster 3 times, Lexi's gonna show up on the podcast and complain about Aaron and Valtier.
Okay. Thanks again, Sophia, for your mail. Moving on to our next email from King Lindblom.
I would like Final Fantasy XVI to build off the large and varied open world of Final Fantasy XII. Have a wide variety of locations, all seamlessly connected with no zones dividing them. Also, I'd like to see the seamless active dimension battle ADB system from that game to make a return and be improved. Also, an improved version of Gambits, which, in my opinion, would mean a lot more fine-tuning.
Yeah, but that's what we've got the 13 system for.
Eh.
Well, specifically something like 13.3, I think, is a good start to an improved version of the ADB.
That would be a definite improvement. Of course, it needs to be better explained to the player that gambits are optional and the game can be played without them. That being said, the battle system needs to be tweaked and improved and made more fun and engaging when gambits aren't used. I personally believe that Final Fantasy XII's gameplay approach was the right direction for the future of the mainline FF. It would have allowed the series to stay competitive against current leading WRPGs like Skyrim, Mass Effect, and Dragon Age. The JRPG called Xenoblade Chronicles unashamedly built off the FF12 blueprint, and as a result then became the most critically acclaimed console JRPG released last gen. As for the setting and story, I'd like to see a return to medieval style of FF1 through FF5 and FF9. However, I'd like the story in that world to be as serious and bleak as that in Final Fantasy Tactics. Yet we've yet to have a 3D medieval game with a really deep and serious story. Did you play 9? Final Fantasy XII was close, but Ron and Pinello ruined it. Plus, Yasumi Matsuno leaving. I would like the hero to be mature and in his late 20s and early 30s. Please, no more emo pretty boys for 16. Okay.
I'm sorry. You're not going to get that. Japan exists. Japan loves emo pretty boys. That is how they get the Fujoshi market. That's why all the characters in 15 are dudes. It's because they're courting the Fujoshi market hard. Real hard.
Hail to the king. That was the best sentence I've read today. I've had my fill of them. I bet you have. TLS after dark. But no, I completely agree. I think the whole moving into the as you put it, emo pretty boys is getting a little bit annoying. And the freaking sausage fest in 15. Come on now.
No, I agree. It's annoying. I'm just explaining why they're doing it and why they're probably going to keep doing it. Because it's selling. That's the thing. In Japan, having the beefcake forever, that is making bank. And it's not just making bank in Japan, it's making bank over in the States too.
You mean the same reason?
Have you ever seen the anime Free? That shit is beefcake central, and it and its merch is selling like stupid.
Lex, are you listening?
Yeah, Lex probably has no idea what that is. He wants so real. It's like, you come in here and you talk about things I don't know the shit about.
It's about swimming boys who are mostly naked. Have fun.
Okay, so Lex is definitely gonna be interested.
Lastly, and most importantly, they need to change the director. They need to choose somebody competent. Ooh. Shots fired.
Boy.
If Yoshinori Kitase will not be directing Final Fantasy anymore, I'd like Hiroyuki Ito to direct 16. I personally don't trust you go for it, man.
Motomo Toriyama or Hajime Tabata as competent directors.
I didn't enjoy Toriyama's Final Fantasy 13 trilogy or Tabata's Crisis Core. Thanks for reading my views, King Limblom.
King Limblom,
a very regal voice there as well.
That's what I was going for. I was going for.
Before we go into the next one, I want to comment a little bit on the current leading WRPGs. One is a first-person action game, one is a first-person shooter, and the other is an actual RPG with turn-based elements. I just find that interesting. That we've grouped them all to WRPG, despite them having basically FPS mechanics.
But isn't that the exact comment you made earlier about how JRPGs are so vastly different, but they get grouped together?
I know. The thing is, though, one of them is literally a first-person shooter, is my point. It just happens to have, or mechanically in all ways, is a first-person shooter. I just find it interesting, and it's not to say that they aren't Western RPGs. It's more that what defines an RPG and a WRPG and a JRPG is so notoriously nebulous. It's like the old statement. I don't know what art is, but I know it when I see it.
On the whole, I agree with King Lindblom's thoughts about what Final Fantasy 16 should be as well. I actually kind of like the idea of doing like the seamless active dimension battle with some sort of gambit system. I think that'd be a lot of fun if they could tweak the gambit system to work a little bit better than it did in 12.
And it would be interesting to see and I would like to see a truly medieval. If we're going to go back, I want to say go all the way back, because it should be medieval, not like I said with 6 and 9, like the Industrial Revolution, where it's like it's got medieval elements, but it's mostly steampunk. 9 had a medieval aesthetic, but it was basically the technology level was Industrial Revolution. There was like Lindblom, just look at that and you'll see what I mean. I would like to see.
So 6 was kind of steampunk. 9 was very much not steampunk. Steampunk isn't about a visual aesthetic. It's about raging against the man in a steam era.
Okay, fair point, but at least in terms of the technology level,
I get what you mean. It's just one of those things where the affix punk actually means something, and if you're not being punk, don't call it punk.
They were raging against the whole brawny black mage thing, kind of,
Sorta, but it's on the counterpart. Cid is the beacon of goodness, if not always the most competent when he's an oglop.
Or a frog.
Yeah.
On that, speaking of King Lindblom there, but I mean, I'd like to see them go back. Again, I mentioned in my comment that I had you read earlier, I mentioned that, I really don't care if they continue going into the futuristic aspect, but if we are going to go back to medieval, I'd like us to go back to like Final Fantasy IV, and yes, every Final Fantasy has had some technological involvements, with airships, and hell, the first one had a floating sky castle in the space.
The thing about both Final Fantasy 1 and 4 was that they were actually from a society that had fallen from a high technology, and there were remnants of the extremely advanced civilization around.
It's kind of like King's Dark Tower books.
Yeah,
in Midworld.
Like even Final Fantasy 3, you'll see this later, is very much an Industrial Revolution thing. The only Final Fantasy I think that's fully embraced yes, we are fully fantasy, we are very medieval, is 2. That's the only one that doesn't have the look. Future tech. It has hell tech, but that's different.
You mean apart from the
airship? But those are two.
The airship, the dreadnought, the giant castle that creates a tornado.
The giant castle that creates a tornado is not presented as technological in nature. It definitely seems to be some sort of eldritch horror abomination. Yeah, the airship and the dreadnought are the only things that are really technological in the game, and both of those are weird and exceptions to the rule. Whereas in 4, it's we've had this sitting around the entire time.
See, now that you mention that, it's interesting because there's elements of the fallen society in just about every Final Fantasy.
Yep. There isn't sort of one in 5, but that has its own problems. And there is technically one in the sequel, but let's not get into that. But yeah, it always seems to be that Final Fantasy exists in, if not necessarily a crapsack world, a world that's crapsackier than it used to be.
All right, so thanks again, King Lindblom, for your email. The last email we'll read here is from our very good friend Sarah.
From Sarah, pronounced like Lara. What's up, boys?
It's Sarah, pronounced like Lara.
Sarah.
That's what I said, boys. I said Sarah, pronounced like Lara.
Oh, God.
I hope you're all good.
Lord.
Thanks for answering all my questions. I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed your last podcast. What a nice change of pace it was. It's really cool to hear you all throwing around ideas and chatting about possibilities and wishes, and what you all do and don't like about the Final Fantasy series. Definitely thinking of having some podcasts like that one in the mix is a really great idea. So yeah, nice work. In answer to your question, what I'd really like to see in 16 is a great story. It's something most of you touched on, but what I find amazing in a story and what makes something stay with me for a really long time, whether it's a book or a film or a game or whatever, is a plot with a massive twist or a shock. Something you really don't see coming and that hits you hard. That's definitely one of the things I love most about 7. When everything comes out, it's so sort of shocking and harrowing, and that feeling stays with you. Part of this, I think...
And legitimately shocking, for one thing, not Shyamalan shocking.
What a twist!
Nothing is from Shyamalan is shocking anymore because you expect the plot twist.
The twist is there is no twist.
One of his recent movies actually didn't have a twist, and that was the twist, so there's nothing.
Yep. Part of this, I think, comes down to the characters. You've got to have a cast of people you actually like in order to care when the plot turns against them. For all its problems, one thing 15 does is have a varied group of characters that tick a lot of different typical personality boxes. And I have no idea what that sound is.
That's me trying not to laugh.
And therefore appeal to a lot of different people. We all have our favorites in any good game. In 15, they have the very, very exceptionally strong female character. They've got the big muscly guy for people to swoon over. They've got the cheeky bad boy, the straight-laced book-smart guy, and the quietish dry humour guy. They do have a harem show. So enough variation for most people to find their favourite, and find something to relate to and connect them emotionally to the story, and probably quite a safe way of ensuring everyone is catered to. As for the setting, I'm not too fast. As long as it's stunningly beautiful, I'm happy. Ha ha! Another thing that was mentioned in the last podcast was multiplayer. I was reading a bullshit, as in not posted on TLS, article the other day. It said that for absolute definite, the Final Fantasy VII remake would have to be multiplayer. I don't doubt they fancied...
Can I just say real quick, thank you so much, Sarah, for your loyalty to TLS over reading your Final Fantasy related news here. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
he actually like shared that with us, and it was like, oh my gosh, look at this comment. It's because it's a big deal. We like to feel like we're an authority of some kind.
I know I am. I mean, I suppose you are too. Anyways, Squeenix could build that in, but how likely do you think a feature like that is for the remake? I definitely think it could make for some interesting playing, especially if future games in the remake end up having similar battle elements as 15, with the interactions between characters to create stronger combo attacks and everything. But as far as I'm aware, none of the other main series console Final Fantasy games are multiplayer. That's what made me think it was pretty unbelievable claim for this article to say it would unquestionably be a feature. Is it something you guys would like to see at least in a future game, if not the remake? Also, this is an interesting point. Several Final Fantasy games have had a multiplayer option in that you could assign in battle the controller inputs to second player's controller.
9 did that.
Yeah.
Me and my sister actually played that for a little bit. We tried to go through a couple of the harder battles at the end where I would control Zidane and Steiner and she would control Vivi and Garnet. And it's interesting, especially if you don't talk to each other.
And the Crystal Chronicles spin-off,
yes.
Of course, the original Crystal Chronicles
that was
multiplayer.
Built around being multiplayer rather than having... That is something you can do single player. I've done it, but it's so much more fun with friends.
Right.
I also have a really random question about how you guys actually make the podcast. This probably just shows my incredible ignorance when it comes to geography. But if, totally assuming here, sorry, Lex and Flintlock are here in the UK, and the rest of you guys are over in the US, do some of you have to be up in the middle of the night or something to manage to all get together, what with time zones and everything? Is it really tricky to find a time that everyone can make? Basically, yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Flint and our good friend Lex, and when Tets join us, yes, they're up far later than those of us in the West. So.
For them the recording starts about 11.
For Lex that's nothing because Lex is a vampire.
Yes, for For Lex, that's
But
waking up.
it seems like Flint doesn't really have a problem with this either.
I just don't sleep.
Flint's got a main line of coffee going right into his veins.
Tea, I'll have you know.
Yep, a constant IV drip.
Yeah, we started recording this podcast at 1:30 in the morning my time.
Holy
so that's some
shit,
indication.
Man.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, let's hurry up with this then, so you can actually get to bed. Really enjoyed the music podcast. Thanks for that. You know what I mean. Thanks for that. It was very interesting. You guys have a crazy amount of knowledge. It's going to be so cool to see as well what songs make the top 100, and of course, what comes out in the number 1 spot. I'm Casey, and the number 1 Final Fantasy song is blank. Thanks for being so sweet. See you guys next podcast. I'm looking forward to it. Your friend, Sarah. Smiley face, crash ouch in the
No
forest.
kidding! I did not know that, and that's actually kind of cool, because I know you've responded to us on the forum, so that's kind of cool now that I know that. Nice.
Can I just make a quick comment on that accent? I felt like it started off in Australia and then had a brief detour through Ireland before going back to Australia again at the end.
It actually was a bit of a New Zealand detour as I hit a certain couple of notes, but yeah, it drifted a little bit, and then I got it.
It's like he was traveling through all 3 countries and changed the accent to where the country he was in.
Yeah. Well, I part of it was that I got somebody specific in my head at one point, and that's when it went to New Zealand, and then I tried to take it back to Australia, and then it just decided it really got lost in customs.
Yeah, you're taking the accent to Isengard.
Well, let's do the next one with the Treant accent.
Let's not say we did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, to answer her question, is multiplayer something that we would like to see in a future game, or if not, the Final Fantasy VII Remake? First of all, I'm going to say fuck no to the remake. Please, no multiplayer for the remake. Secondly, as far as the multiplayer for a future Final Fantasy game, I probably wouldn't be opposed to that, depending on how it's executed. If it makes it so that you have to rely on having a second person play in order to get through the game, I'm going to say a big hell no. But if it's something where a second player can just drop in at random, or it's not an absolute requirement, then yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
This is probably just wishful thinking again, but I could see multiplayer in one area and be okay with it and actually be kind of excited about it. And again, that would be in the Gold Saucer, because I feel like if they did have, for instance, say that fighting game as a mini game, it would be cool if your buddy could just put it in the second controller and you could play that fighting game together. Or
do you mean the rock paper scissors game?
Well, I'm talking about if they made it a real fighting game and not a rock paper scissors game.
Okay.
But again, probably very mediocre game. But it's a mini game. It doesn't have to be that good. Look at Tetramaster.
Tetramaster's amazing.
A triple triad's better, sweetie.
Yes, agreed.
But or
they're both kind of jank. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Magic the Gathering.
Tetra also kind of jank, but for completely different reasons.
One thing that would be interesting is I don't know. This is probably revealing my nerddom a bit, as if this entire thing isn't. But if any of y'all ever played like the old PlayStation 1 Digimon World game, if you could actually save your monsters that you raised and then battle them later, it'd be interesting if they had a similar mechanic for chocobo racing, where if perhaps you could breed chocobos and somebody else could breed a chocobo and you could race them against each other online. But again,
Pocket Station.
I was actually thinking that.
But that's probably just wishful thinking. I doubt that's actually going to happen. That's probably like 0% chance of happening. But it'd be cool.
I feel.
No, so what I was going to bring up...
I feel like I Captain America, so I actually got the reference. I actually played that game that he mentioned.
So let me make you feel like Captain America in a different way by mentioning a game you've probably never heard. Have you ever heard of Secret of Mana or the Seiken Densetsu series?
I heard about Secret of Mana. The other thing, I don't even know what that is.
It's the series that Secret of Mana is a part of. And it did multiplayer really, really good. So it has 3 playable characters, and normally in single player, you switch between them as you like. But you put in a second controller, and then you have all 3 of them are in the fight with you. So you control one, 2 of them are AI. You put in a second controller, second person is now in control of one of the other characters. You take them out, it goes right back to AI. If they did something like that, it could make it work. I don't think they should focus on that in the remake. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. I don't think it should be their focus.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want it to be a main focus of the remake. In fact, I just as soon not have it in there at all. But if they wanted to do something like that where you could drop in and out a second player in a future Final Fantasy, again, I'm not opposed to that. I just don't want it to be a primary focus to make a multiplayer Final Fantasy. That's what the fucking MMOs or Final Fantasies are for. So
I think it depends a lot on what combat system they end up going for. Because if it is turn-based, then I'm not actually going to want to play the multiplayer in the same way that games like Final Fantasy IX had it. If they go for real-time battle, where you do only control one person, then the system that Ryu just described would be a perfect fit, I think. I'd love to have two other friends over and play through Final Fantasy VII together.
I did that when I was in high school, man. It was called a sleepover. All weekend bender, man. Order a bunch of large pizzas and a bunch of soda and play in shifts.
Yeah, you can play in shifts, but there's just something great about couch co-op.
Yeah, my friend and I actually played all of Secret of Mana together at the same time. It was great.
Nice.
All right, well, again, thank you for your email, Sarah. We did get several other pieces of feedback, but since we're running long here, I will go ahead and hold them for the next episode. That said, I do want to leave you with a question for the listenership for this week, and it's simply, what do you hope to see announced about the Final Fantasy VII Remake or anything else at the Winter Gaming Conventions? Email us at lifestreampod@gmail.com or reply to the episode post and let us know what you think. Along with our question for the listenership, there's actually one other question I actually wanted to pose. Next episode of the Lifestream Final Fantasy Podcast will be a very special holiday-themed episode, and I have actually already posted on the Lifestream forums a question asking for your favorite Final Fantasy holiday memory. So please, if you haven't seen the post on the forums, please feel free to email us at lifestreampod@gmail.com and let us know about your favorite holiday Final Fantasy memory. We will do our best to read your responses on the air. Should be a lot of fun. Also, you may have noticed real quick that we did a little bit of rebranding with the name of the podcast. It is now the Lifestream Final Fantasy Podcast instead of just the Lifestream Podcast. We thought that might help draw in some listeners that maybe we weren't getting before here. So don't mind our little bit of construction mess here. With that said, we do want to hear from you. Send your questions and feedback to us at lifestreampod@gmail.com. You can also reply to the episode posts each week on the lifestream.net forums. Please leave us feedback on iTunes, and we will do our best to read your questions, comments, and feedback on air. We'd like to thank you again for listening to the Lifestream Final Fantasy Podcast. Take care, and always protect the crystals. Music heard on this podcast is courtesy of Incompetech.com. I'm sorry, is that a reference to another game? Because I'm not familiar.
Oh my god, Vader.
The Halo series.
I'm sorry?
It's Halo.
Is it Halo? See, I don't play first-person shooter games, so...
Well,
it's just amazing that the cultural osmosis has, failed in this regard.
Like Windows 10 has made their personal assistant their version of Siri, Cortana, and they even use the same voice actors. That's how much of a cultural icon Cortana has become for all things AI.
Interesting.
But yeah, so
I mean, it could be worse. Everything.
Well,
could
trust
be
me.
GLaDOS.
Today's
this piece
episode,
of the podcast will be edited for Mike's stupidity. So
on today's episode, we teach Mike all about Japanese and about Halo.
Yeah.
You know GLaDOS, right? Oh no.
Go play Portal.
See,
We'll pause the entire recording.
It'll only take about 30 minutes.
I am very narrow, I guess, in my selection of games that I play. I mean, literally, it's Final Fantasy, it's the Lego games, and it's sports games of some kind, be it like in the NBA 2K series or Madden. That's pretty much it.
Do you play Rocket League?
I've never played it before.
Oh, dude, you gotta try it.
It's super entertaining. What I would suggest, because Portal is a very short game, look at a playthrough online, just so you know why everyone knows GLaDOS.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And
we should probably get back on
And once
topic.
again, this will be edited out of the podcast for Mike's stupidity. So, moving on here.
Maybe
That's
put
why
it in the
everybody's
bloopers
tuning in.
at the end.
I may do that.
Oh my God.
Just to make myself look like an asshole, I definitely will do that.